Okay, so we will start even if all body are trying the demos, etc. But we have to keep the schedule. So welcome again. I'm pleased to manage this second session dealing with business communication and management. We will have 3 papers, and I'm very pleased to introduce the first speaker, Steve Berbera, who will talk about a serious game for firms to reduce ecological footprint using information system. So please, Steve.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Okay, perfect. Thank you. Good morning. My name is Steve Berbera. I'm from Neuchâtel. I work in the University of Applied Studies of Western Switzerland. And I will present you our project, more specifically the main output of our project, which is a serious game that would help firms in order to reduce their footprint on the environment. We realized this project with my colleague Damien Rosa, which is just here today with us. So, with our project, we wanted to give a help on the big issue that is sustainability. I would like to quickly explain what is sustainability. There are several definitions of sustainability, but I would like to present this in this way. On the one hand, we have the footprint, the ecological footprint, which is the impact of human activities on the Earth. And in the other hand, we have the biocapacity of the Earth. This is the capacity of the Earth to produce biological assets, in other words, to regenerate the resources that we extract from the Earth. And sustainability, this is just to keep the footprint under the biocapacity of the Earth. What is the situation today? Maybe you have already heard about the overshoot day. What is it? It's an indicator. It is the day of a year when the humanity have already consumed all the resources that our planet is able to regenerate in this year. For instance, in 2019, this day was July 29th. It's pretty early. Okay. And the problem is, the more we wait to undertake actions, finally, the bigger the footprint will to have to reduce in the future. So we have to take actions now in that context. So in this issue, what we would like to do? We focused on organizations. Why? Because organizations have their own part of their responsibility, and some studies show that they don't carry out enough actions. So, why they don't carry out enough actions? There is a huge lack of information. They don't know that when we make green actions, we could have a return on investment, for instance. And the second reason is a lack of practical tools that is available for their context to do something. They just don't know what to do and how to do. And finally, there is a need to raise the awareness of the collaborators in firms in order to undertake action that would reduce the footprint of the different companies. So the solution that we propose is a serious game which try to make firms, collaborators, more awareness about the green actions that are possible to do. Why we choose a serious game? It was the better choice because serious game has a real potential to promote learning and awareness. And we saw that studies show that people who have already played a serious game on sustainability, after that, adopt more sustainability, more sustainable action, more sustainable behavior. So we chose to conceptualize and to develop a serious game. For that, we based on several things, but the most important is the 7 impact, the 7 footprint area, which comes from the ADEME, which is the environmental agency in France. And the 7 area regroup all the activities of humans that have an impact on environment. And we use them to classify and to create new actions that organization could undertake to reduce the footprint. And those actions will be on the game, on our game, under some cards, some action cards, as we call it. And our game, its name is Make It Green. We test and improve the game by several stages. The last one, maybe the most important, is that we test it in real condition in firms with collaborators. And for that, we use a questionnaire that we ask participants to fulfill before and after the game. And that allows us to know what the game has, how the game affects collaborators, what is the new maybe awareness or not. So the result is a serious game, a board game. This is not a digital game, this is a board game on paper, which play with 4 players around a table, and they have to collaborate together in order to choose green actions to take to the purpose of reducing the footprint of a company. So how it works? The main objective of the team around the table is to reduce the footprint of the company. But they have a limited available money to do that. This is how the board looks like. And the game is organized on 4 rounds. Each round represents a month in the company, 3 months, sorry. Each turn represents 3 months. And you can see on the right 4 columns. Each column represents a round on the game. And to start the first round, the team discovers an objective for the round. That is reducing footprint by 5 points, for instance. After that, the teams fulfill a market. This is as an area where they discover some green actions they can undertake. So they read their actions, and those actions would be, they can after buy those actions, and those actions can reduce the footprint of the company, but have a cost. So together, they have to collaborate in order to choose which ones they want to buy. When they have made their choices, they take them, they buy them, and they put them in the first column, which represents the first round. And that is the main mechanics of our game. After that, they repeat 4 times until they arrive at the end of the 4th round. This is an example of the board when the game is achieved. We can see the 4 columns with the different actions that they choose to take. What lesson participants learn at the end of the game. First, there is some lessons, but here is two, for me, the most important. The first one is that they have to take action as soon as possible in order to limit the accumulated footprint. And that is representative of our reality. They don't have to wait the fourth round before taking action. They have to take action as soon as possible. And the second is that green action don't ease negative definite cost, and most of the time action could raise a return on investment. At the end of the game, most of the time they have money at disposal which is caused by return on investment of certain actions they take. And our questionnaire shows that at the end of the game, we can measure some awareness that was increased by participants and the intention to promote green action in their films too. Okay, to conclude, we can say that a method based on a serious game can increase awareness of sustainability and can help organizations to initiate new green action in a company. We have a different perspective for the future, but the most important today, I think, is to promote the game in order to play it in as many firms as possible. So if some of you are interested in deploying the game in a company, just contact us. We will be pleased to help playing the game with you in a company. Okay, thank you for your attention, and I want to thank all contributors.
Thank you, Steve, for this nice presentation. We have time for 1 or 2 questions. Are there any questions in the public? Yeah. Okay, I'm coming, Sam.
Thank you. So we are pleased to see that we could actually apply it to a company or even a class, because we are teachers and some of us are teaching definitely sustainability topics, so I think we'll get in contact. We'll contact you to maybe have a few games, but so far it's a board game, right?
Yes, it's a board game. Yes.
Do you have any plans in the future to have a digital version, URL-based, that we could play like in trainings or?
That is one of our perspectives, but we do not plan to develop an online game today. Okay. But it would be a solution. Yeah. It depends on some opportunities to do that. For the moment, we play the game in films, but not yet with students. But we have this year some new courses in Neuchâtel that we include sustainable areas and sustainable IT more precisely. So I think we will play the game with students at that moment too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. There is another question, Sam.
Thank you. Do you need to have a game master present to introduce the game, or can you send it to a company and they can start on their own?
Yes, thank you for the question. Yes, we need a game master that will present the rule at the start. It takes about 10 minutes, and usually the first round is accompanied with players, and after that, the 2, 3, and 4th round, each table are allowed to play the game. I don't say, but the game could be played in parallel with multiple tables, and that allows at the end of the game that each tables can compare their scores each together.
Yeah, to have multiple settings and to.
Yeah. Exactly.
To check. Yeah. Thank you very much again, Steve.
Thank you.
And now I invite Ella Postulka for the second talk. She will present how to extend SQL scrolls to teach SQL DML. I don't know what is DML, but
okay,
we will learn about it. So welcome.
SQL is structured query language. If you have a database, it speaks generally SQL. So I'm going to play this video in the background. Can I play it?
Yeah, sure. If you click here.
Oh, it's starting. Yeah, the video is playing now. So what we have there is a game that we teach with. I use it in teaching. So it's supposed to be closer. Okay. So we use the game in teaching, and it was developed by Kai Krause as part of his master thesis about a year ago. He repurposed an existing game from Finland. And basically, he added his own content, debugged it, and made it available. And now I have a program funded by the school until end of the summer, where we're extending the game. I have a collaborator, Andrea Kennel, who is in Brook at the school. She also teaches databases. And I have a student, Shari Meyer, who's now doing her bachelor degree, and she's improving the game. So she's done a lot of good work in improving the usability. And now move to the next one. And sorry, Lucia is the programmer. She's got a PhD in machine learning and things like this. I'm trying it, okay. So the message is, this is a digitalized game, and it's used in teaching. So it's like a repository of questions that students use to learn, to practice. And I'll talk about what is SQL and do students like it. So it's all about magic, okay? You guys, you sit down in front of your computer and you press a few buttons and then you know it all. It's almost like hypnosis. You're very good in SQL after that. So what happens with SQL? SQL is a language that databases speak. If you talk about a school like I'm in a business school, in each business you have a business information system. And business information systems mostly consist of 3 parts. They always have a database, okay? They have a database. It may be in the cloud or somewhere, but it's a database. There is some kind of business logic, and there's a front end, so this is usually now a web page or some kind of app. And databases currently speak SQL. There are some new databases which speak no SQL, but it's not really a standard language. So we're also working in that direction. So what we have here, this whole thing was started with COVID. So it was during COVID, and you have very little contact with students during COVID. You know, you're basically teaching online, and you're staring at black screens. So that wasn't very exciting. So actually bringing the game at that time was very useful for everyone. And this is on the right-hand side, you see what a kind of different ERP systems, enterprise resource planning, or business information systems there are. Just a very bright spectrum of all kinds of systems, and they all run on SQL and databases currently. So what we have here, this is the SQL. And when I submitted this paper, I have marked quite a few things. So you see those blue arrows as future work. We have now handled all this. So we have added a lot of questions. We started with 41 or 42 questions, and now we have almost 150 questions. And we've got lots of books. So all these things with blue arrows are the new parts. So we've basically extended the game with create table statements, and like when you declare new data structures with inserts, deletes, updates, and similar stuff, and also a wider range of SQL. So we cover syntactically almost everything that's important and that can be done on the platform that we're using. And the usability was a problem because now as we add more material, you can see we've got more books. So our student Shari has improved that considerably now. So we can manage basically much more. She's added some scrolling and some other pop-up things and improved the appearance of it, so it's more usable. What we have here, I've got 2 graphs that we just generated on how the game is changing. So you see the first part on the left-hand side is about 40 questions that were released in the first release. So obviously they have been played many, many times. And you can see that everyone who played each question, they were successful, like 99%, you know. 99% of people managed to pass each question, yeah? So there's like completion of each task, a percentage of completion of each task. And you see some new tasks have not been tried yet because we just released them about a week ago. And they are now being used actively. The exam is in about 3 days, so I hope we get a better statistics in 2 or 3 days. And now you see in red underneath, these are all the new tasks. So they've been added during term, and we constantly add them. And we've used an interesting trick. We set the students a free scope task, a free scope assignment. Please design a system and write SQL queries with 1 table, with 2 tables, with 3, with 4 tables. And now we're redrafting all this and reusing that. It needs a lot of work still, but we've got some data and we can reuse it in the game. And this is the number of tries people had. So you see here that some of the questions seem to be harder, and people need more tries. So the green part is, the kind of like how many people did it and how many tries there are in total, the brown ones. So we have this data actually stored in a MongoDB, which is a NoSQL database. So this is another reason why we're going now into a different direction. At the moment, this is all SQL. We now have a master project which will add NoSQL to it. So people will also be able to train for the modern technologies. Obviously, NoSQL comes in so many variants that it's hard to decide what you should learn and how to support it, but we're trying to experiment with that. And basically what we have higher student engagement, because if you have a traditional lecture-based teaching, students just listen if they're polite. If they're not polite, they play on their phone. Now they're active, okay, so they do something. And they actually quite like it. So I'm there to, kind of help them. I say, or I even use it in teaching actively. I say, this is the question, and I kind of write it in front of them, and we test it, and they try to enter it as well, and this is quite good. And if we have immediate feedback, they also have fun chemicals in their brain. I hope that leads to better retention in terms of material that we're teaching. So this is actually very, very good, and some of them have asked us to delete their play record in this course, so they can start again before the exam. So we've had to do that for two people. Okay, so this is the new part. So we've got like create statements that you can write. You've got a specification like you do in business, and then you have to create a table, and this was a technical extension as well. We needed some figure out how to test these things in the system. And then there's another one, so this is like a more complex business puzzle. There's a specification at the top. You've got these bits that you pull into the other field, and this is when you've pulled them in, you see the answer. So it's all tested against a small SQL-like database. Okay, so Shari is playing on the playing and improving the usability. She did a survey. She established the priorities. She implemented and tested, and we can now basically scale up. Because with the system we had, we couldn't scale up to 500 questions. This is our goal, to have 500 questions, hopefully. And this is, do I have time? Or yeah. I would say people who want to see a demo, they come to my laptop. It runs on a local infrastructure at the FHNW. It needs a university login. We're going to release the code at some point. I don't know whether I can, if I press that, will that play the video? Yeah, so these, so she's pulling the bricks into this area and then submit, and she's adding some sounds. We also have a button to switch off the sound, and fireworks appear as well, things like this. So we're trying to go into more gamification, because we needed to have a repository of problems, and now we can add gamification features. So the guy who's doing NoSQL in the autumn, he's going to add an avatar and make this avatar change and stuff like this, and maybe some other gamification features. We're also implementing a certificate. So at the end of doing the game, you get a nice certificate, like you get in a game called SQL Island. But SQL Island is very limited. It only offers like about 35 minutes play, and you get a certificate because it has fewer questions. Okay, so to summarize it all, I've had a great time doing it all. It's very useful. Students are involved, they love it, and the acceptance is very high. We've actually published a paper which is on ACM, so if you query in Google Pustułka SQL Scrolls, you'll get the ACM paper, which summarizes our, the two criteria, basically the student satisfaction and whether they learned something. But that's much harder to prove with classes which have got less than 20 students or 20 or 17 taking part. You don't have statistical significance. So we can only really kind of do subjective evaluations. So we're extending to NoSQL, we're adding more queries, and we're trying to correlate playing with exam success, although I'm not sure whether it's ethically allowed, because we haven't asked the people whether we can do that. So we've got the data, but we're rather treating it anonymized at the moment. Thank you very much. And any questions?
Thank you, Ila. Thank you very much. We have time for 1 or 2 questions. Questions? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. Is it available for competitive universities to test?
Yes, so I know that one of our teachers, Mark Schaff, also teaches at the highest law. So he started testing the game recently. We can release the code if anyone wants to install it. The only problem is that we've got an authentication infrastructure. So Lucia had to actually work with the school IT to make it available to everyone at the FHNW. So we can give you the code any day. You just need to port the authentication, unless you want to run an open server that anyone can get to. I'm not sure. I mean, it's up to your IT and security to decide what's appropriate.
Rapid question. The game is mono-user or multi-user? Are there any cooperative or competitive mode for this game?
There is not at the moment. But what students actually do in class, when they work with me, they usually, 2 of them work together, you know, and they kind of like, sometimes they work on their own, but quite often they kind of huddle together and they work on it. So it's not under my control how they work, and I just tell them you can work, you know, the way you want.
Nice.
We would like to include something, but basically the main thing for me is the content creation, because we don't want to have examples from a book, you know, they say 2 assistants to 1 manager and calculate how many assistants on average, you know. We don't want to have questions like that. It's kind of like, it's kind of not interesting, really.
Boring, yeah. Last question. We have only 1 minute.
Thank you. Do you need to go through the SQL question before accessing the NoSQL, or
No, it's
you can
the
start
books.
whatever you like
Books are
first?
independent. Initially, we had 2 books. You had to finish the first one before you went
To
to
me,
the
it seemed
second
a
one.
bit
And now we've
counterintuitive.
decided the students want flexibility. They don't like this. So we could also have a story mode, but we don't really have a good story at the moment. So I'm still thinking on how to do that. I think we've got at least another year of development, you know, with the time we can invest into it. And no money.
Thank you very much again.
Thank you.
And again, all the authors are here for at least for today, and some of them for the 2 days, so interaction is very welcome. And I'm now pleased to welcome Xavier, I don't know, Villain or Willa? Willa, okay, sorry, for the 3rd and last talk of this session. So please, Xavier, go ahead.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. So I started this project as part of a master's thesis, a master research I did during my master in education, and I keep on completing it, making it a bit bigger. I did that because as a teacher, as an educator, we know that emotions will trigger long-term memory, which is what we want as educators, for our learners to remember what they learn and what they experience as long as possible. So it's not something we can argue that emotions, whether emotions will trigger or not long-term memory. We know that now. What I was missing as an educator is to have now some kind of differentiation between different types of games based on the emotions they trigger towards the players. So I started it with 2 games I was using at that time, and we will have a bit more details about that in a moment. Yes. So I think my parents are actually watching it through the live stream. I have an answer for them 25 years almost after the question. why did you spend that many time playing those two games? That was the games I was playing in my childhood. Actually, I have a reason. I have an answer now. It's to get experience of game design, okay? As I believe, like, game designers need to be experienced game players first. So eventually, I might be able to design my own video games. So far, I'm designing my own games to help learning. So the first one is one I have created from zero. So it's a board game that is used as a revision, a little bit like the sustainable game on sustainability with many factors, but this one is about startup and entrepreneurship, because it was one of the classes I'm teaching. The other one is an adaptation of a famous game, Spotted, with the same mechanism, but different levels and with as many elements as we want. So I was using these two adaptations, the game I created and also the adaptation. I adapted Spotted with words of accounting, which was one of the scariest topics I've realized when I started teaching it. So that was the same kind of, matching card memory game when they try to use words from accounting to get used to use them, and then to realize, it's called a diagnosis game, at the end of that short activity, they would realize what games they don't know what is it about, what does it mean, and that's what they're supposed to learn. So based on the different level of complexity, we could have up to between 20 and 55 cards, but you have like a lot of tutorials explaining that on YouTube, actually. That's where I found how to do it. But what I wanted to do, they both work very well, but what I wanted to know is what is the experience of students playing these two games, and if there's one that they prefer instead of the other. So that was the research. At that time, I did the research on two games. On the semester that we just finished, I have done it with another game, a simulation from Harvard Business Review. I think that's the name. On entrepreneurship as well. So I will be able, probably next year and next convention, to also look at the difference in students' perception of their emotional state between board games, simulation, and card games. So in order to measure that, I have used a famous framework from, I guess, almost every game designer. I see some heads nodding. The first one is the player's experience need framework. Satisfaction is the S. Based on those 4 elements, this is a framework that is used to any kind of games, but I was still missing that element of emotions that I wanted to measure with my students. So I have adapted another concept that is also famous for game design. It's been very well applied to game design by Jesse Shell. Is that the citation? No, that's another one. Jesse Shell, maybe you probably know his book, The 100 Lenses of Game Design. And he really tells us how to apply it in designing games. And I wanted to use that theory of flow to measure which games works best. And the goal of the theory of flow is to position the learners in flow, when the level of the challenges they're facing is matching with their skills. And the problem we have, every trainer and educator, is first in a class, we have 30 students, 30 different levels of skills, and we only have the same activity for everyone. And then we need to gradually add challenges to match with the skills of the learner. Otherwise, they could get bored, or they could get anxious if the level of challenges is too high. So that I wanted to measure that with those 2 games. So the first results I had, I was witnessing that, but without any big surprise, but I could actually measure it, that the board game, more complex with different elements, and there were elements of strategy as well, because they had 3 different ways to win the competition. If their startup was the richest, if their startup was having the best teams in terms of skills, or if their startup was the most notorious in terms of notoriety points that they were winning during that game. The other one is more simple. You're just playing the game, and in the end you realize if you still know what those words are meaning or not. the board game triggers more positive emotions from the theory of flow. Okay, so more arousal, flow, control, and relaxation. Even if relaxation is not really something you want to aim. You don't want learners to be relaxed for too long. Okay, and then on the theory of flow, you also have, I think, also 4 elements of negative emotions, which is something we want to avoid. And that was a surprise for me because I was not expecting that. From students' feedback, they were enjoying, it seems that they were enjoying a bit more the board game. As it was also revision before the exam, it was a nice activity to do. But that board game also triggers almost 50% more negative emotions. So it allows me to understand that, yes, board games, more complex games are great. We learn more and we remember for longer. But you could also lose your students much faster. And I experienced it actually on the last semester when I'm still continuing that research. When maybe because I'm used to it, I introduced a little less elements of the game, and I've witnessed that more students were not playing it at all in the end. So for the purpose of the research, I let them playing it or not playing it, because I want just to have reliable results. But I've noticed it, that board games are great. As educators or teachers, when we want to do a board game, it's because we love it. But we need also to pass the message on to the students. So it's a bit more difficult for board games. For the PENS framework, they were quite kind of equivalent still. Yes, that gift is something you don't want to see, right? Especially not in a class. It's still similar in terms of experience of need satisfaction, whether you use a diagnosis game, a simple card game, or a complex board game, it's quite similar. But the difference is really in terms of emotions. So I qualify those 2 types of games as the first one. It's like doing a roller coaster. I know some people are sick by roller coasters, but it's like an emotional roller coaster. It triggers much more positive emotions, so more long-term memory, so more actually ultimate goal for teachers is to have people remember, but also more negative emotions, so it needs to be taken with a lot of care. And since I realized that, I think I'm spending about half an hour to introduce the game, but to introduce the learning outcomes of the games and how it's going to match with the desired learning outcome of the class and how it's going to help them having better grades. Because if students are playing a game in a class, it's for having better grades. Otherwise, they don't do anything. As long as it's not clearly matching with the grades. And card games are still a very good tool to put them in a safe ambience, especially when it's a difficult topic. I'm thinking about probably programming an SQL database. It could be also something useful for accounting, for business students. Even if they're called business students, accounting is still the black sheep. For future development, now I'm working on having more quantitative data, more qualitative as well. I'm planning of doing a few interviews of using the famous Ishikawa 5 whys, asking why 5 times, so why did they experience better, did they have better experience? Based on their answer, why is that? So then we could have much deeper knowledge about what triggers those positive or negative emotions. Okay, so I will interview a few students based if they were having negative emotions and also positive emotions to have a bit more knowledge about it. The final goal of that is to be able to have some kind of framework to differentiate different types of games and towards the emotions that those games are giving or making the students have. So thank you for your attention. I think I might be around 10 minutes.
Thank you very much, Xavier. Very nice. We have time for 2, 3 questions. Sam, very active today.
Thank you. Thanks for your presentation. Did you try to introduce that game to non-business students? Because your analytics is very interesting. I would like to know if you can make the same stats with non-business students, because it may give an insight.
Not yet, because I need to have the players playing the game, and the board game, it takes about an hour. I developed a shorter version of it. It's like a bit like Monopoly when you start with more cards to make the game faster, you know. If you start from 0, it's 1 hour and a half. If you start with the faster version, it's half an hour, 40 minutes. I didn't test it yet with non-business students. My HR manager tested it. She bought it for her nephew. I think I've sold about 25 games so far. So it's like, you know, you're growing your startup. And it's like a Monopoly, kind of, but without cards. The cards are just like scenario or project, whether you can have it or not. And then you're partnering with the other players to put your team in common so you can have better project with more rewards. And 3 ways to win in the end. So it's also a nice strategy game, but for kids up to 10, 12 years old so far, from what I've witnessed. I'm not sure, I would love to, but I'm not sure how I could ask them to maybe have an interview, but that's interesting as well. Maybe in the future. Yeah.
Thanks. Another question?
These questionnaires you did about emotions, first of all, are these standard questionnaires? And secondly, how reliable are they in general? Can people actually say, and are they open about saying what emotions there are and what they think?
I'm asking them if they were experiencing a certain emotions, so then I could link back to the models. I'm not sure I understood your first question. Maybe you could...
Is this a standard questionnaire for emotion elicitation?
Yeah. The PENS framework is the standard questionnaire for that is used in game design in general, so I just use the same questions. Okay. I wanted to have elements also of emotions, so that is not a standardized questionnaire, but I have used the wheel of flow of the psychologist, Csikszentmihalyi. And so that is standardized. I just use the same kind of format of questions, like where you're experiencing arousal. I just had to give synonyms, because they're not English native speakers. And for all those 8 emotions, I just added 8 questions, actually, to the PENS framework to have more emotions.
Thank you. We have to stop now.
Thank you.
You are available the whole day, I think.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if you have more questions, we can interact during breaks, etc. Now I have 3 announcements. First, we will have, as I said before, Professor Fabio Solari from University of Genova, I don't know how to pronounce it, Genoa, in Italy, who will be our first invited talk in this 7th sessions of GSGS. So we will start in 4 minutes, I think. So I invite really everybody to be in the room. It's a very nice talk. After the talk, we will have lunch, and also I want to ask all the speakers to come in the welcome desk, because we want to take a nice picture of them, photo of them, in order to have them in our database, and to also make some marketing and some advertising on our website. So please be around the registration desk during the lunch time, all the authors, okay? Thank you very much. So 2-3 minutes for Fabio to be ready, and then we will start the keynote session.